However, some believe that there is a more appropriate way to stamp out bullying where the focus is on the victims.
The Kidscape motto is keep kids safe. That would be the kids who are being bullied, keep them safe. And if possible, keep the bullies safe. But I will tell you that we get 16,000 calls a year. I've had 5 calls from parents of bullies.
Part of the charity's work focuses on improving the self-esteem of victims.
We help them so that when the bully comes at them, the bully has no handhold and can't get in. Now, the child, of course, is acting and may feel scared inside, but we turn them into ice mountains. It really works.
Michelle's experience has led her to believe that the solution can also be in the victim's own hands.
Well, you know, I used to say, never ever punch the bully because you'll get in trouble. And that always happens, isn't it? The victim goes, and the teacher goes, I caught you. I have talked to so many adults who said the only way that the bullying ever stopped in my life was when I learned to box and I went out and I punched the bully. So, hey, you know, anything that works. Anything from just getting the kids together and having them have an ice cream to, you know, punching the bully if you have to, but we would not advocate that method, but I'm not throwing anything out of court.
Michelle Elliott is also adamant that persistent bullying must be punished, a view that echoes government advice.
I have to say to the bully, this is what you've done, and this is what you're going to have to do to make up for it. Apologize to the victim, atone for what you've done, and change your behavior. We'll reward you if you do that, but we will give you consequences if you don't.
Within a certain framework, I mean, I, for example, think that we should also always be clear that bullying is wrong. We should always be clear that punishment is, that bullies should be punished. That's what we say in our guidance.
Someone who's at odds with the government is George Robinson. He emphasises that punishing the bully can be counterproductive.
One of the human responses is when you're blamed is to defend or to justify. So I think we run the risk of actually not making the bully look inside themselves to say, why should I change? They look outside and say, that person's got me into trouble.
George Robinson is a former head teacher at a school for children with behavioural difficulties. With educational psychologist Barbara Mains, he designed a method called the no blame or support group approach.
50% of kids in schools don't report bullying, and if you ask them why, they're frightened that the teacher intervention will make life worse for them. Because if we punish the bully, who does the bully want to take revenge on? Not the teacher, the person that got them into trouble. So we said, can we keep the victim safe, which is important, and can we change the behaviour of the bully? We just found that there were far more positive ways that not only changed behaviour but began to change how the person felt inside themselves.
I don't want to come to school anymore. I tried bunking off 3 times.
In the support group approach, a facilitator meets the victims alone and asks them to describe their feelings. Then, without the victim being there, the facilitator brings together what's called a healthy group.
The group would include the bullies if there were some colluders, but we'd also bring in other kids who we knew would be unhappy when they heard the sad story of the victim and would want to do something. We then compose this healthy group and tell them the victim's story. But we don't blame anybody. We don't say, this happened and he did this. It's the feelings in the affective domain of how the victim is feeling, and then ask the kids to make a response, and the type of response, what can they do to help?
It's an approach that's strongly criticised by Kidscape, despite both being under the Anti-Bullying Alliance umbrella.
Well, they don't necessarily bring the victim into the same room as the bullies, but what they do is they bring the victim's feelings and thoughts and concerns to the bully, who has no interest in this victim at all. And what they're hoping, and it's a wonderful pious hope, is that the bully is going to develop empathy.
The critics are always saying this is a soft option for bullies, which makes us laugh. We think this is a tough option. This is making people not only face up to themselves, but facing up to the peer group about their behaviour that has made somebody so miserable. We think the easy way out is to punish the bully, to exclude them.
In a situation where real bullying is going on, where they have that sort of disregard, if you do not investigate what happened, write it down, and have consequences, you have taught the bullies that that is an okay way to behave. And I think that's appalling.
Kidscape might not think the no-blame approach works, but the story of this 19-year-old former bully seems to demonstrate that it can.
Well, basically, I was a bully. I made someone else's life a misery while they were at school. For not all his whole life at school, but for, say, a year of his life. And it was complete misery just because of me and my mates. You couldn't say it made you feel good, but it would, I don't know, in a way it gets stresses out of you. I know and you shouldn't take things out on other people, but it would. I'd be in trouble, obviously. I'd have a head detention or I'd get suspended. But that never worked. That was just winding you up even more, you could say. You start off bullying him, you get in trouble, you get suspended, you come back to school, you take it back out on him, you get in trouble, and it just keeps going round and round and round.
Jamie's behaviour did not change until his school employed a different strategy.
Somebody from the No Blame approach showed us a picture that they made the kid draw, which basically showed how he felt. It was just like loads and loads of big people all around on this page. They looked like a 2-year-old's drawing, like stick men, and then there's this little red man in the corner, and that was obviously him. And you could see where he's in the corner, he feels isolated and on his own. And then there was like about 1 or 2 blue people, and he said that's people who help him. The way the person from the No Blame approach put it across, it just made you think, what actually are you doing to this person? Why are you doing it? What do you get out of it? Because you don't get nothing out of it but trouble. It's not good for you, is it? After that, we all obviously went home and had to think about it when you're on your own. And the next day in school, we decided, instead of us being the people making his life hell, we'd make it a bit better for him in school. So I'm not saying we were best of mates with him, but we did have him as, like you could say, the friend who we looked out for, but we didn't hang around with him or anything like that. It was like, so from lesson to lesson, instead of kicking him all the way to the lesson, we'd just walk with him, so no one else would kick him. And within a few weeks, not a few weeks obviously, it's maybe 2-3 months, he was running through the corridors. It's a complete different story, and it just made me feel, I can't explain it, it's inside, something that makes you feel warm inside, makes you realise you're not that bad after all.
And there's a whole body of knowledge about labelling theory, that if we label somebody as a bad person and they perceive themselves to be a bad person, they'll behave like a bad person. I think the whole point of the no blame approach is to make people see themselves as good people who've behaved in a bad way.
They ask the victim to write down, or draw if they're too little, how they feel. So I write down, I feel really, really bad when Johnny bullies me. It makes me cry, especially when he mentions my mother. Bullies are going, yeah, love it. I know exactly how to get at Michelle now. And the teacher thinks that we've sorted it because we've said to Michelle in front of her all these things. But the reality is what happens is that I never tell again. And I have got a file that thick. In fact, a letter that came in yesterday from parents who've withdrawn their kids from schools where they've used that approach.
Nevertheless, the no blame or support group approach has been adopted as a key part of the anti-bullying strategy in Essex, the first time it's been promoted county-wide.
Up until this year, we'd always had, I suppose, what a lot of schools have had, which was you found the bully, you spent all day trying to investigate, you got to the bottom of nothing, and you punished somebody, sometimes the wrong person, and the bullying carried on.
So the school adopted the support group approach, As well as members of staff, the school uses older pupils as facilitators.
We trained a group of peer mentors who were year 10 and are now year 11, and we attached them to year 7 and year 8 tutor groups. And those children now work daily with our younger students, and they're involved in listening to the problems they have, and they're always available for them to talk to.
And sometimes peer mentors have personal experience to bring to the process.
I'm useful as a peer mentor because I can understand how bullies bully and why they bully, because I have done it in the past. And once you understand how and why they do it, you can take steps to stop it.
Being a peer mentor has helped Peter to understand the feelings of those he previously bullied.
It wasn't always obvious because they tried to hide their feelings, and when they let their feelings go, that's when you realise, that's when you're slapped into reality, that it's not all fun.
Bullying comes at the very heart of the emotional literacy debate. One of the things that schools are moving towards, the primaries have already adopted it, and it will be coming in September 2006 for secondaries, are the new SEALs, the social and emotional aspects of learning. And this means that all schools have got to think about how the children have positive or develop positive relationships with one another.
I think it's had an effect to use the peer mentoring and the support group method on the ethos of our school, because there are some elements within our school, as I guess there are within any large comp, where it is being seen to be cool to be one of the troublemakers rather than one of the peacemakers. And we're trying to up the status of the peacemakers.
We now know that having a solid peer support system in schools actually does mean that your A to C grades do go up. There are many different studies to say that the only thing that can happen is that academic achievement improves.
There's also a very practical approach, really, because we used to spend hours talking to children who were upset, they'd fallen out with friends, someone was being nasty to them at the gate. And I have to say that I don't deal with those issues now. The Year 11 peer mentors filter out the things which, in our terms, are not as important, leaving us to deal with the more important issues. So from my point of view, it's highly successful.
From exclusion to peer mentoring and the support group approach, the strategies schools employ to prevent and deal with bullying are many and varied. Despite their differences, the many agencies agree bullying should not go untackled. What they show no signs of agreeing on is how to stop it altogether.
In the end, schools do need, in the light of their circumstances, the age range of their pupils, for example, the decisions that they've made locally, to decide what they think are the best ways of dealing with bullying.
I think the traditional way is like putting somebody in the stocks and throwing rotten vegetables at them. They'll just get angry.
We asked a group of teenagers who came on one of our courses what they'd really like to do with the bullies who had tormented them for all these years. And the list started with voodoo, then it went to bear traps in the playground, then it went to cyanide poisoning, drowning, and they were just so angry.
I think it would have been unlikely that I would have excluded so many girls on such a scale if I'd been in early years of headship. I think because I was very secure in my relationships with my governors, particularly the chair, in the relationships with the local authority officers, I knew that they would support what I did, even if they thought, goodness me, she's off again.
Lunchtime, we're going to beat you up, they said. Although a lot of the time they never actually did. But it's feeling the fear that they're going to was enough to make me hide in the toilets. So it's quite nasty.